What's going on, everybody, and welcome to the Paranormal Council, where four opinions matter. We discuss all of the different paranormal topics, and of course, there's four unique members here, so you're going to get all kinds of perspectives. If you like the show, stick around, subscribe, like. I want to see as many likes as viewers, so everybody that views this, please smash that like button. It really helps us to get the out there in the algorithm and spread the news on the show. And speaking of the show, you're not going to want to go anywhere because we're going to be talking about mental health versus paranormal. So if you're not quite sure what that necessarily means, we're going to get into that. And of course, all of us here have a unique perspective on it, probably, or at least a perspective on it that we may even somewhat agree on. So without further ado, let's get into this mental health versus paranormal. So I'm just going to kick it off by saying that a lot of times and I know for myself, and I'm just going to come at it as a seasoned field vet of many years of going to paranormal investigations, there's a lot of people that I've witnessed over the years that, I always talk about this in a lot of shows where I talk about whenever I investigate, I tend to pick up patterns, right? Well, I notice a lot of times too, there's a lot of clients that seem to also have some mental health issues. Maybe, just something unique or different or not about them. So I kind of wonder, one, if there really is those things going on with them that they're being affected by the paranormal. And I know in some cases they are. I just don't know what degree, because I feel like that there is a certain amount of actual mental health, sometimes contributed to things like some of the bad food programs out there through the government, and I think there's some things that contribute to some mental health in other aspects of our lives. But I think paranormal is a big one. I just don't know the percentage, so I'll let some of you guys weigh in on that and what you experienced yourself. But I definitely have noticed a pattern where I just see a lot of people that have mental health, and sometimes when you help with their cases, they seem to actually sometimes get a little better. I've seen some people kind of start acting not as strange and not as quirky, and seems like some of their mental health, I wouldn't say was cured, but definitely improved significantly. So I just wanted to throw that out there, and I'll let one of you all take over from here.
We're all like trying to be polite and wait and see who wants to go first.
Well, I think for me, coming from the situations I come with from a Christian perspective and dealing with deliverance, and there's so many different areas that I go through and deal with, from someone just dealing with the mental health aspect as a client when they know they have a mental health issue, plus they're having stuff going on in their homes. I think it definitely does impact their mental health. I think the paranormal, the spirits do impact our emotions like fear, depression, anxiety. They do impact us in many different ways. And so I think there's two ways we can look at it. In one way, like, how does the spirits interact with a person in their home versus, the mental health of the person themselves. And so, I think I would agree with Josh on that one.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's something I've definitely noticed too. Is like, yeah, like, I guess to what degree? Because there's some cases I went to, and there were some clients that had some severe mental health issues. They were really crazy. What I would call, it's like the things that we call crazy. Normal people, we go, oh man, that person's crazy. But there is probably some real things going on with some people and stuff like that. I mean, I'm not qualified enough to get into some of the different types. I'm just not. Um, I'll talk a little more on the investigator side of it later. But Jen, Stacy, one of you two.
I think there's a really fine line, and this is what a lot of people forget, right? We start talking about different diagnoses, we put titles on things, we talk about maybe how it's affecting an investigation, whether it's residential or even just at another type of investigation, right? But there is a very fine line of um, understanding the information, the feelings that we're getting, right? And we throw out the, like the word crazy. Hear it all the time in good ways, in fun ways, and in not so good ways. But I think that there's so much to talk about here. I'm trying to like put it in all these
I
different
know.
trains of thought into one train of thought. Um, you know, when people experience something that they don't understand or doesn't feel like themselves, right? That confusion causes us to kind of question, to step back, to be like, what the heck? And that uncertainty shakes things up for us. It causes kind of a fear factor. And the more it goes on, when people are like, hey, something's wrong with you. Hey, you're acting different. Hey, you don't seem right. You don't fit the mold. The more you hear that, or these titles that get thrown around, the more it starts to eat away at you to the point that you start to really question who you are, what you're experiencing. You start to feel crazy. And the more crazy you feel, right, the more it overtakes you, and then you can't fight off the fight or flight instinct that kicks in, right? At some point, that fear turns into almost like paranoia instead of hypervigilance, um, or it is just really high hypervigilance that affects your ability to function normally, or what people would consider normal. And you start having trauma responses and coping mechanisms come out and things like that that would be seen as not normal, maybe just for you. And the question is this does this stuff come from, is this reaction coming from something external to us, such as paranormal, or is this something about how we're allowing outside of us forces to affect us, such as maybe you're in some relationships with some friends who aren't very supportive, or they like to tear you down, or you're in another type of relationship with maybe a partner or spouse where they're constantly making you question because they don't want to step up and take responsibility and making you think you're crazy in like a manipulative way. There's so many different ways that external factors from your life, your relationship, your work, your old family dynamics, things that you're carrying in with yourself, those can all cause mental health concerns that have nothing to do with the paranoia, but they often lead to the hypervigilance and paranoia, fear factors, overreactivity, just different things like that that make you think, is this paranormal? Because this isn't me. This doesn't feel normal for me, right? And you start to question, did I see that? Didn't I see that? Am I seeing things? Am I crazy? Like, am I hallucinating? What's going on? And so when you don't have the understanding of how we work as humans, it's really, really, really difficult to figure out what's paranormal and what's not paranormal. And also to that effect, like when we talk about mental health concerns, nobody is broken. Nobody is broken. We are all different. We all have different struggles. Nobody is broken. Nobody is like quote unquote unfixable, right? There are always things that you can do to make things better, to improve things, things like that. So we're not coming at it from that aspect of, oh, you're just crazy, or oh, you just need meds, or oh, people are people. They're a whole person. So I'm going to get off this rant for a minute here because I could talk for hours.
Well, Jen's right in the idea that the labels are the the foundation to a lot of people when they start approaching both the paranormal and mental health, because so many people are misdiagnosed from the mental health society or institution that even amongst themselves they admit, yeah, we got that wrong. Uh, what happens is when you get slapped with a label, and they try to withhold that information even when they're giving you therapy and all this other kind of stuff. They don't want to say you're necessarily bipolar or schizophrenic or whatever diagnosis they have going on. They really don't like to share it even with the patient, because they know as soon as they slap that label, it becomes a worldview paradigm. And if it's not that, that worldview paradigm becomes a lock. It starts to solidify. This is who I am, kind of thing. And it's not necessarily the case. And it comes down to owning it, really. I personally known a lot of people who were born natural mediums, but they didn't know it. They were diagnosed with this and they were diagnosed with that, but they were oversensitive on a lot of different things. Andrea was just talking about this on the side. She was misdiagnosed as bipolar, but she was sensitive as an empath. That is incredibly common, that people are a lot more intuitive, or they're mediumistic. They have these abilities they'd never understood or were grown up in an environment to let them know these are the things that you can perceive, and you're not crazy for seeing them or feeling them or hearing them, because they're not you. Mental health will tell you, yeah, it's all you, all that stuff going on inside is all you, and you need this medication and that medication and this medication to get it, resolved. Honest, some people do, but a lot don't, because they were just born sensitive and they don't know how to deal with it, because the world, society, Western culture doesn't know how to deal with it. Now, if you're in a different culture like India, that's the go-to. That's the first thing they're going to go to in that culture. And remarkably, they have a lot less mental health problems, because that's their first go-to for people who are in that sensitive group. Western culture is just the opposite. They throw pharmaceuticals at you, when in reality, you own something that didn't belong to you. Bipolar, schizophrenic, these are not you most of the time.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that's a that's a, I was gonna say. I mean, that's a good point, Stacy. But yeah, for sure. I think that pharmaceuticals get thrown a lot. Misdiagnosis. I think it's kind of like on where things can start sometimes. Like, for example, you can have a person, they're having issues. Maybe they feel like they're schizophrenic or something, or whatever's going on, and they go to a mental health expert. Then from there, the mental health expert's like, you hear voices. Well, here's a prescription or whatever, right? Here's this. Okay, and let me write this. I think the dog's trying to weigh in here. Raven, hush. So, so the mental health, right? So they might get these drugs, these prescriptions, but if you look at what happens if that same person went to, say, a professional type of paranormal investigator, somebody that goes and investigates, and in the end says, okay, well, we think you may have an attachment. You could have this going on after we did all of our investigations, and here's the things we do. And what if that helps? And the whole time they were just under spiritual attack. Versus, if they went, so sometimes it's where you go first. And again, and I'm not trying to discredit any of the professional medical world. It's just that these are the common things that can happen out there to people, as they will quickly get misdiagnosed. Because let's face it, a doctor or a psychologist, they're not going to say, "Oh, you might have a ghost." I mean, we can't even fathom, I think, them saying that. So, but that's what we're talking about for the show. So, anyways, Jen, I cut you off. So,
I think, and it's very interesting to me, right? So I'm not a clinician. I just want to make that very, very clear here. I am not a therapist. I am not a psychologist. I have just done a whole lot of work in the field of psychology. And it's interesting to me too, because I've had both experiences with different therapists, right? Where I share with one, hey, like, I've always heard these voices, like, I think I might be a medium. And they immediately jump to, okay, well, you are not, and you have something going on psychologically, and we need to fix this. And they immediately start talking about, like, anti-anxiety meds and talking about all kinds of weird things. But then you have other ones that are like, oh, really? Well, let's look, right? And I started looking into like the DSM. Anybody can get the DSM. Go get the DSM, learn it, understand it, read it. You don't have to go to a therapist to have some basic understanding, right? It does help. Don't get me wrong. I'm not discrediting that. But just like with anything, you have to advocate for yourself, right? If you don't advocate for yourself with your bills or whatever, they're just going to be like, keep paying me, keep paying me, keep paying me. And you're like, no, I already paid you off, right? So like you have to advocate for yourself mentally and medically. So, you know, when it comes to things like look at the DSM. I went through the DSM actually with a therapist specifically regarding this because the question comes up so many times. And when you look at the criteria for schizophrenic, they don't line up with mediumship experience. It's not even in the same ballpark. But somehow society believes that, like, if you hear voices, you're schizophrenic. No, you're just very, very much misinformed, right? And that's one of the things too. It's like we talk about all these different things that are taboo and crazy, and paranormal is taboo, and we don't talk about these things from a religious standpoint or from a societal standpoint or a classist standpoint or whatever, right? The thing is just learn. Go out there and find out for yourself. Talk to people. You have to take personal responsibility for all of it and advocate for yourself. You know, there are clinicians who are very, you know, like, oh, where'd Josh go? He hit the button again. They're very like one-track minded, right? But there are also clinicians that are very much, hey, this is a whole picture. We need to look at the whole picture, not just a small part of the picture. And so sometimes, you know, you have to find the right doctor. You have to find the right therapist. You have to find the right person to talk to. Just like every paranormal team that you call to come out to your house, if you think you've got paranormal, is not going to be able to help you with an attachment. Mm-hmm. Maybe they're just going to want to record and put it on their TV show. They don't want to help you. They just want to be able to put it out there for the world to see, to learn from. You know, so just be intelligent, be shrewd about who you're engaging with and how you're engaging with. And if they're not meeting your needs, if they're not answering your questions, I don't care who it is. If it's a friend, if it's a pastor, if it's a coworker, if it's a doctor, or if it's a therapist, if they are not able to help you answer the questions that you have, find somebody else to talk to. If they're not willing to dig into it with you and find it, go for it. Find it for yourself.
So real quick, I want to say that for those of you watching, because this is a mental health episode, we thought we would help people with OCD by changing up our boxes. So we're in different orders tonight. So to mess with your OCD, because we're trying to help you overcome your mental health issues. So just keep that in mind, Andrea. But guys, I also want to add to the point too of like, I kind of look at it like, you know, going to like a psychiatrist or something like that. I think that you should go when it's needed for sure. But I also think of it the same way I think about drugs for dieting, like Ozempic or whatever, things like that. Don't go there yet. If you start with other things like the non-invasive stuff, like maybe reach out to a paranormal team. Do your research though. Don't just reach out to any team because they might exacerbate something. So reach out to teams that talk about importance of mental health and doing things properly and stuff like that. But try those things first, or even in like we have Sean in here, you know, maybe reach out to the church and talk to the leadership there, and see maybe that can help you. Because believe it or not, you'll be surprised. Because a lot of them have counseling, you know, experience and things like that, and they're very well versed, and there's things that they can do to help you as well. But try these other options first. That's the way I look at it. Is like, try this first, and then if all else fails, then maybe go seek what they call professional help at that point, because maybe by you going through that process, if those people can't help you, then maybe you actually do have a problem that may require a drug, unfortunately, or something like that. There is those situations. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, there's also a point of no return too. What I've noticed with mediums who didn't know that they were mediums and they end up losing their marbles because of it. They latched on to the idea, they adopted the paradigm that they were crazy, and if you tell yourself that you're crazy, guess what? You're crazy, regardless of whether or not that you are truly, have a chemical imbalance or some kind of malfunction. It may just be a point that you are overwhelmed with all kinds of things, but it's that adoption and owning of that label that a lot of times is what is the defining factor. Um, if you read the Book of Mediums by Alan Kardec, it's a book that's like over 100 years old. It's before the DSM came out. Um, it is written by a scientist who went over these things in depth with psychics, mediums, and the dead themselves. And the book itself is written in like a scientist. It's very dry. It's very clinical. It's not, ooh ah in any way, shape, or form, but it is very instructional. And it goes through all the different stages of what happens when a medium tries to ignore their abilities, because there's no ignoring it. You can't turn it off. It's there. It's part of you. It's like, ignoring a limb. It's going to be there regardless of what you believe. So learning exactly where you're at if you're having issues like that, and what to do as far as cope with it. And if you find out that you are actually a medium for real, own it. Accept that paradigm. It really does take a huge weight off your shoulders that you have doubt about who and what is going on inside your own marbles. So
Well, I
Yeah.
think I'd like to step back for just a minute because it almost sounds on the outside like we're saying it's either paranormal or it's mental health. But on what we're really trying to say is that they do, like Zach was saying, like he was hoping that clinicians would start to understand that they can go hand in hand, right? And
mhm.
I think that it's important if you feel like you're experiencing paranormal activity to have a therapist, but also to seek out a good paranormal team and have them work together, right? Get data and information from both, because even if it is strictly paranormal, that can leave long lasting traumatic effects on a person who maybe didn't even previously have them before. And if they've been living with us for a while, they're going to have struggles. They need a good therapist who's understanding and open minded and is curious to look at the whole person, right, and their experiences.
Mhm.
And so I do think that whether it's if with mental health, if it is something mental health related, a paranormal team can come out and be like, okay, this is not it. They have to do it professionally and intelligently, of course, with empathy, right? But they can say, this is not what you're dealing with, so that they can focus on getting the right resources, right? I
Process of
understand what,
elimination.
huh?
It's process of elimination. You can eliminate the
Exactly.
paranormal.
I
If
think
you
they
can't
should do them
eliminate the
together.
paranormal, yeah.
Yeah, they need they need the support going through the process, no matter which it is, right? They need to have the facts, the understanding, so that they can process those and deal with them correctly. Um, and to what Stacy was saying about, there is kind of a point of no return. I mean, that's true of anybody. Somebody who constantly engages in negative self-talk is going to have a lot more struggles lifelong with depression and you know, motivation to do anything in life and to succeed. And that's absolutely true. Um, Melissa says good therapists are hard to find. They are, but they do exist. There are a number of them out there. I personally know a number of them. And I think there are more and more becoming open to it. So don't give up on that, right? And if you can't find one, do something like talk to your pastor, find something like the wellness center where you have an outlet and you have some support that maybe doesn't meet the clinical standards, but can move you in that right direction.
Well, and I want to add too that on Zach's comment where he was talking about that what's all available in the paranormal world, like what can the paranormal offer and how they can go hand in hand. And I will say that unfortunately there's not a lot of things in the paranormal community to address it, unfortunately, because the paranormal community seems to be very, on average, I'm not ever seeing everybody, but on average seems to be more focused with vanity projects and things like that, and TV shows and stuff like that, or things that are like, hey, look at me, or how can I make money at this and stuff like that. So that's where I want to.
Yeah, there used to be a thing called parapsychology.
Yeah, and but that's why I want to say, like, it's important to know that there is tools, there is things that is out there or is coming out there. That's why for me, like, I'm gonna talk about Jen's Wellness Center for a second because it's such a big deal to me. It's very passionate, and it's not because of who Jen is to me. It doesn't matter, but it's because of what it is, and it's there to help people in these situations, and it's almost like merging. It really is like mental health. And so imagine if you had an amazing car. Okay, let's say you had this amazing car and you spent all this time working on the outside, on the body of the car. Well, you take it out to show off your new car and you wreck it off the road, because you didn't work on the mechanics. You didn't work on the basics of the car. You got to have the mechanics. You got to have the car's got to be able to start. It's got to have good gas, good brakes. It's got to have a functioning mechanical system to keep you safe, keep you on the road. And then you can make it look all nice and pretty and show off all the fun things and the bells and whistles and stuff, And so I just use that to kind of give you guys an idea of why the wellness center is such an important thing, because it's a place that you can go to learn and basically build the mechanics of yourself, because anybody can go out there and teach you, like, or try to help you develop your mediumship and all these things. But to me, that's like the body of the car. That's kind of more surface level stuff. You've got to be able to fix the car itself, the mechanics, the brakes, the engine, the things that really make the car run and be safe. That's what you got to fix first. And that's why I love what Jen's doing with the Wellness Center. And I hope that with the pioneering she's doing in that, with trying to merge mental health and even spiritual, that we're going to see more of that, and that'll help lead the way for more things to come out and to make that more of a movement. So that's my thing.
Well, I appreciate you saying all that. I mean, that's why I'm passionate and I have so much to say on this. I mean, I could literally talk for hours about it because it's been my life's work for the last decade. Is doing this kind of thing, and I'm finally doing something with it and putting it out there. But it is so important, and people, sometimes we talk about this, like with residential investigations, is addiction and attachment, right? And how they can have very similar qualities and how they can have a negative impact on each other, but they're often misconstrued for one another. And it is that another one of those fine lines, right? Or how does addiction open the door? Or somebody who maybe has been sober for 6 years and they're like, hey, I've got this. Like, I'm doing great. My whole life's different. But there's still something going on, right? And it's not quite fitting. Well, there could be paranormal as well, because when you were not, active in addiction, then you let things in and you don't necessarily realize that they stay. When you put down the alcohol or the drugs, there are things that you've picked up along the way. There's traumas that'll come back through therapy. There's behaviors that you have. There's sometimes brain damage that occurs, depending on the drug use or alcohol use or length of use, right? And those affect your life going forward. So, what of that is mental health? What of that is physical? And what of that is something paranormal that you picked up and invited in along the way and may not even remember, right? Like in therapy, when you have these repressed memories that will pop up when something comes up later in life, and you're like, where did that trauma come from? I didn't remember that until just now, right? Paranormal can do the same thing when you become aware of it, right?
Right.
Well, on
You know,
that front, Sean is right on the entities that come in. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a in the mental health field at all. But as far as attachments are concerned, I haven't met anyone yet who had an obsession with a fetish, which is what a fetish really is. It's an obsession that didn't have an attachment. The whole idea of self-harm, doing things where they're uh, really abusive to themselves to the point where they can't even function is a get aroused in any way to function in reproduction without doing something really harmful to themselves in the process. That whole dynamic or paradigm is really attachments that are whispering in your ear and causing obsession, because your whole self-worth is so diminished that where you actually switch between pleasure and pain. You can't feel pleasure unless you're feeling pain. If you're not being cut, burned, whatever, that switch where you're going from one to the other is I personally, I haven't met anybody who hasn't had an attachment who's in that state. Could it be? Possibly, sure, but I haven't found one yet. So
yeah, it's very possible for sure. Like that, a lot of those things are attributed to, and I think that's even more important. Why that people like us on the council and other people need to keep pushing the mental health side of paranormal as well, and not just vanity, right? Because even myself, like I had my TV show, and I was on the vanity side of it as well. To a point, I did have a mission, and I had a legitimate mission to things as well. But even now, being inspired by Jen and the mission of mental health and helping people again, I've gotten back to my roots more of doing residentials and helping people. And so now it's become another um, passion again of mine. It was a passion before, but now it's back. And so now I feel very much um, pleasure in helping people now, and being more of that mental role the older I get. And so I feel it great with the direction that we're trying to push. And I really hope that more people continue this drive, because like with Stacy and Sean, everybody, we all made great points about these subjects. So when we come across, if you're an investigator, you're gonna come across mental health issues. You are. And so if that's the case and you're not quite equipped to handle it, again, make sure that they have places that they can go. Like, swallow your pride and refer them to like the wellness center or to religious places. Don't just, go on ego. Give them the proper tools that other people have been working on, and to help people utilize these tools to where we can help decipher and get to the bottom of this. So again, that's just
I'd like
me
to add a
reaching
little
out to the
something.
community.
I'd like to add a little something just to make sure like we're understanding both sides. I want to make sure we're presenting both sides, right? What Stacy said is correct. Andrea is talking about her own experiences with addiction and attachment, right? Um, but I can say too that fetishes and things like that can actually occur without attachments through mental health. It's typically seen in extreme um, abuse cases. psychological abuse cases. And it comes out of a situation where there is intense emotional dysregulation. You when you can't even begin to understand or process your own emotions in a logical or realistic way, when your sense of reality has been so warped that you're no longer functioning in a real situation through extreme abuse, then yes, those things can occur. And they don't really have to do with attachment. Like I said, it's that whole question of, is it an external force that's paranormal, or is it an external force outside of yourself that's changing the way you are, such as a relationship,
Yeah,
right?
I think that was kind of like what Stacy would say, was saying, like chicken and egg, or egg and chicken, right? What came first? I think sometimes, yeah, like, so somebody, let's just say, I'm just tying this together as a layman person, right? Maybe Jen is talking about, like, hey, maybe you went through severe trauma, and because of that, maybe you have that cutting fetish or self-harm fetish or whatever it is. And you have that, but that could also put you in a vulnerable place to get attachments or possessions. But then at the same time, it can be inverse, where you could have possessions and attachments that could start to cause you to harm yourself or cut yourself or things. So I think it goes both ways, and I think that's where it's up to some of us in the community to try to help people figure it out and get to the bottom of it.
Yeah, I think I want to jump in here because one of the things, like I said in the pre-show, we was talking about it. I think sometimes we try to separate things out too much and not realize that it can be both and. In other words, sometimes in what we deal with quite a bit, dealing with these topics, is we do our intake. One of the things we try to do is sit down, and I'll sit down for about 45 minutes just having a casual conversation, not not just about spiritual things, but just asking them, because see, things could, the paranormal and the spirits that they're encountering could be natural. Obviously, there might be just things going on. They might be a medium or whatever, or it could be trauma, that something that's in the past. And we've always said this: if you're in deliverance ministry and you don't know the difference between a multiple personality and a demon, you really need to get educated. Um, if you don't know the difference between trauma induced personality versus a demon, that's what we're kind of talking about, dissociation. But then also there's drugs. I'll give you one example, and it kind of ties something in that you said earlier, Josh. Folks, listen, not every pastor you go to is going to talk about this. There are many times I've dealt with people who's come to me and say, I've had some issues I'd like to talk to you about because I know you deal with the paranormal. And I was like, okay, but and they'll go, I don't want you to throw me in an insane asylum or throw me to the psych ward like the last pastor did. And this one guy kept telling me the story, and he came in and it was like, okay, let's talk. And he had done mushrooms and had a very psychedelic encounter. And during that encounter, he experienced some spirit animals. And during that time, when he experienced that, he kind of thought it was just a trip, right? Well, honestly, no, it's not just a trip. There's some real spiritual things going on there. And not a lot of pastors are going to understand that. Not a lot of people, not a lot of people in paranormal are going to understand that, to be honest with you. And so, and he kept talking to me about this, and I was like, well, what's this? Because he kept, in his waking after this, he's done the mushrooms, he kept talking about this spirit animal, this fox keeps coming to him in his waking, he could see it, but nobody else can. And so we began to talk about what this fox was teaching him. And it was actually acting as a guru kind of to him. And it was teaching him all kinds of different things, which I'm not going to get into right now, but it was actually teaching him things. So the voice and the spirit that he was seeing, and this is one of the things that I work with psychologists, and one of the things that they kind of tell me is, look, we kind of know the difference between when someone's just hearing voices or they're actually encountering a spirit that's talking to them. They don't talk about it out loud, but they know the difference. And once you've been in this field long enough, you kind of begin to see the difference. Like, if something's teaching you a religion, it's not your imagination. It is something else. if it's teaching you telling you to self-harm, there's some issues going on there. And so I think it has to be dealt with. I just kind of wanted to throw that out there because, folks, just be careful. Don't be disheartened by the pastor who turns you down or even sends you to the. There's other people out there like me. There's a lot more becoming more available like me out there. So just ask around.
Yeah, and that's same thing with paranormal teams. It's you're probably more likely to get a paranormal team that's not going to be sensitive to your actual needs than getting a team that is. So unfortunately, the percentages are not in your favor, but that's why it's important to do your research, ask around, and of course, if you're watching this, get with us. We're all here representing really 3 or 4 different entities right now. So if you're watching this and you need help or you're concerned or questions, by all means hit us up. And if you might be on the other side of the world, but we'll try to figure it out. We'll try to figure out what kind of help we can get you, what we can do. There's things we can do online to help you out as well. But also, I want to take a quick moment. So, for those of you watching, guys, we have started a Discord, the Paranormal Council Discord. If you're not familiar with Discord, get on Discord. It's a server, it's a community. Okay, I put a link in the chat. So go to the Discord, join it, and we have discussions that you can join. You can post. There's places you can go in there and post memes. If you have audio, video, things that you want us to check out, post it in there. Also, we are going to start doing some post shows. So once we get done with this show, as soon as we get done after the show, we're going to end up meeting up over on Discord, and eventually you guys will be able to join the show and chat with us. So it's going to be pretty cool. It's going to be we got a whole community going on over there that you guys can start to build and be a part of. And of course, all of you are going to be the first people in the community, so you'll be the OGs someday, right? So guys, click that Discord link or copy it and put it in your stuff. You don't have to do that right now. Keep watching the show, or unless you do a separate window. But yeah, guys, hit up that Discord. In fact, there's even in the paranormal forum, I started a new chat just about mental health and paranormal. So we have a few different things. We have naked ghosts is a good one, and how old can ghosts get is another discussion. So we got different topics you can get in there, give your thoughts on, and there's also some general discussion stuff. But anyways, I'm sounding like a big commercial tonight, but that's okay. We got a lot of stuff that we're having to get out to you guys here to provide a lot of tools and resources and fun for you guys also.
You could have just said all the cool people are on Discord, and that would have been it. Everyone would have got the idea.
Yeah, I know, right?
You have to get on Discord then.
Yeah, well, I'm the only one here who's not on Discord, so I have to get on Discord.
We know who's not cool. Just kidding. No, but yeah, and we're eventually gonna hopefully have all 4 of us there, and you guys will be able to chat with us and all that. But yeah, and eventually too, I'll even we get enough of you guys, we can also chat during the stream over in Discord. I'll have it on my other screen here too if we ever want. But in any case, back to the mental health topic. So I think that, again, all you guys are making great points, and it is. It's a tough subject to navigate, which is why I think a lot of paranormal teams avoid it, because it is tough. Not all of us can easily identify mental health issues. And it is hard to sometimes distinguish. Let's be real. It's easy to talk about it when you get out there and you're dealing with a case. There's so many times it's just and Stacy does bring up a point earlier where it's there is some people that have kind of that slippery slope. They went a little too far, and now there probably isn't anything but medication or a brick building that's going to really help them. So that's why I'm saying there is going to be those times when you may just not be able to help that person completely, or whatnot. But like I said, this is why there's a process of elimination, as we said, to try to get down to that point where we can try to help people.
Yeah, and the whole idea that we were talking about before, or I've been talking about, is when you actually take the ownership of whatever identity you've got going on, your brain actually has a thing called neuroplasticity, meaning that it rewires itself to fit a worldview paradigm. And if you are, and that's with like any habit too, if you have a habit that you're trying to break, no matter what it is, it takes roughly between 21 and 30 days to rewire those pathways in your brain with, neuroplasticity. If you suddenly adopt an identity, whatever the identity is, your brain will rewire itself to that identity. So, accepting the fact that you are, you know, schizophrenic or bipolar or whatever it is, that becomes your identity. In today's culture, so do a lot of different weird genders. But the whole idea is that whatever identity that you take will become that until you put a lot of effort into changing that, because rarely does anybody actually change who their identity is once they've established it. So
You're
don't.
exactly right with the ownership, right? 100%. It is all about ownership. It's your life. You own it. What are you doing with it? And if you're not taking ownership of your life, why? Right? And like you said, you're going to have to do the work. Once you have this kind of alternate identity that comes in, whether it's one that, you received in childhood from, family, or societal things, or whether it's one that you've got midlife or one later in life, it doesn't really matter. Wherever these different identities or roles come from, right? You have to do the work to redefine them. I talk about everything you were just talking about actually in my book, as well as things like, when parents become empty nesters and they're no longer parents. Well, what is their role? What is their purpose? What is their, what are they supposed to do next? Their whole life has become this identity of being parents. And now they're left going, now it doesn't fit, right? Because their brains have rewired to the reality of being parents, and now nothing seems to fit. So yes, you can undo all of that, but like you said, it's going to take ownership. It takes ownership through therapy, through daily actions, through thought process, through, the bad news is it's a long journey back, right? That's the bad news. The good news is it's a whole lot of baby steps, and each baby step has a huge impact. So you see results right away when you start changing things. So you're not as lost. And the more you do trying to get to the right version of yourself, or the true identity of who you are now, it becomes easier and easier the more you do it. And less shocking to your system as well.
Now, well, for some of you that maybe are kind of wondering, like, okay, what if I'm an investigator and I'm out there? How is there things I can learn? And it is tough. It is something that over the years you will develop a little bit just by doing it. So again, you're not going to be perfect. You're not going to diagnose every single case correctly, or sometimes people just won't let you. Like clients won't let you, or they'll hide things from you and things like that. Who knows? But one thing that I've learned too, like a little tip, I guess you would, is one thing that helps me. Again, this isn't perfect, but something that can help identify attachments, if you can't sense them on people sometimes, is see how your investigation is going, if the client's not around, and then maybe bring the client in for a little bit with your investigation, and see if things change. Sometimes, the client will be hanging around, and I've literally filmed like interviews with clients, and then paranormal activities going on, and then when they leave and then we do the regular investigation, there's almost nothing. And then we bring the owner back in, or the client, and all of a sudden the activity picks back up. So sometimes that can be a sign that they may have an attachment. So again, it's not definitive, but it's definitely one tool that you can use as an investigator to start to try to figure out those type of things. So I just wanted to share a tip. If you guys have any other tips that you want to provide out or additional information, anyways.
I have a question for the panel, right? Knowing how complicated it is when working with clients to kind of determine what is the best course of action for our clients. Is there an external referral that needs to be made? What is in our ability to handle, assist with, things like that? And also understanding how all of these things affect clients' mental health, team members' mental health, and the things that we encounter in the paranormal, right? That are way like stuff we don't even understand yet, but we're trying to work to help people with. Knowing all that we know with how complicated and dangerous it can be, not only for ourselves, our teammates, but also the clients, right? Is this something that you would voluntarily do, or is this something that you feel like you're called to do?
There was a lot of different questions in that one question.
A lot of info to unpack, I guess, but yeah.
Well, I would, as far as determining, whether it's paranormal or not paranormal, that's step one. The action taken after that will determine from step one where it branches off from there. If it's not paranormal, then I can't do anything. I'm not a mental health professional in any way, shape, or form. So they get a referral that way. Or, at least me throwing up my hand saying, I can't do anything for you because what you have is not paranormal. And that's not my wheelhouse. If it is paranormal, then we can go down the ticking order of what to do after that. Largely be based off of what is taking place, what kind of entity is actually involved. Because it may be something as innocuous as a relative that wants to reach out but can't with any other way, so they're making a mess of things to get the attention so that somebody actually pays attention. And once they have that resolved, the paranormal activity just disappears. It's a lot of different things involved when the paranormal side is actually the track to go. But if it's, determining whether or not it is or is not paranormal is step one.
Yeah, I think for me, it's more, especially if we're dealing with the Christian side of things, and we're dealing with helping the person to grow spiritually, to even, and a lot of times, even if there is an attachment, if there has been an attachment, they need to relearn some things spiritually after that attachment's gone. I've even had people, no joking, that had to learn how to drive because the attachment was so much attuned to their life that they didn't really know how to drive after that attachment, because that part of them, that attachment was giving them the ability to do that. And so what we try to do is help that person grow spiritually, mentally, dealing with the depression, dealing with the anxiety, because some of that's not going to dissipate just because the entity's gone. They still have to grow. They still have to learn. They still have to be a part of society with that. And so what we try to do is take it really slow. Now, as far as a referral, I think for me, when we're looking at things and I begin to notice, because I've worked with so many different mental health agencies, when I begin to see that there's some issues going on that's beyond what I can control or what I need to know, because I don't counsel people. I just do biblical counseling. I'm not a counselor. I can't give medical help. I can give spiritual help, and that's kind of what I do. But when I begin to realize that there may be some things happening I may need help. That's when I'll call or have them to go and to seek professional help. But I personally know a couple of psychologists that if I get into that spot, we usually work together. If the insurances will on their end work out right. So, it's all about helping that person best way we can. We usually double team.
Yeah, and I would say probably for me, I would, and I'm just trying to remember after all of that what your original questions and stuff were there. Uh, but I will just say for me, um, I know for a long time there I was compelled to. Well, when I first started my journey a long time ago, it was an inward journey, and it was about myself. It was about sort of figuring out my faith, figuring out the paranormal, spiritual, where I fit in everything, life, God, everything. It was just that inward spiritual journey. And then once I started to have residential cases and to start seeing that there was more to this and that there was people in need, I felt more drawn to help people. And so I did that for a really long time. And then I kind of got burnt out for a while on it. And I think that some of that's because even I didn't fully understand. I wasn't quite mature in my paranormal development. So being a paranormal investigator takes years to develop and learn and to mature and to see things in different perspectives and to learn a lot of the aspects of it. So now when I got back in this last like 8 years or so, um, it's been a different journey. And now, thanks to different mentorship and spiritualism and different things and learning and just all kinds of stuff, for me, it's now more I'm compelled to help people. And again, as I said earlier, even meeting somebody like yourself, Jen, somebody that has a passion for helping people inspires me to get back to that stuff again and to get back to my roots. And for me, it's like when I'm out there with a client, it's hard to say exactly what I'm going to do because it's not always black and white. So a lot of times it's just assessing the best you can and going through the processes that I've learned over the years. I think Stacy brought up earlier, mentioned it, process of elimination, right? So I think it's sometimes going through that process of elimination and just trying to find out the best way to help somebody. And sometimes, yeah, like it might be that somebody just wanted somebody to listen to them. They might not even have a major paranormal issue. They just were lonely and they wanted a team to come in and just sort of hang out with them and talk to them. And like, I know it sounds crazy, but sometimes it's simple things like that. Sometimes, and Stacy brought up this scenario actually. Sometimes a spirit is wanting something simple. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've had spirits that just wanted to be known, just to say hi or just to sometimes pass a message, but sometimes they don't want to pass a message. They just wanted somebody to acknowledge them, and then things are good or they move on. I mean, so I think I'm going to exhaust all efforts I can. And if I reach to the point at the end of my investigation, when I get to the total part of my investigation, and I total everything up, and if I still am left with, I still can't help this person or I need to refer them elsewhere, then yes, of course, now that your Jen's Wellness Center is a perfect example, I'm gonna put that out there. If I talk to the client, I feel like they need spiritual, I might call my buddy Sean and be like, hey Sean, I've got somebody, I don't know if you can help them. Maybe you can talk to them, but they seem like they're wanting to talk to somebody in the religious community. And so it depends, and maybe it could be somebody that has a lot of African religion heritage. So I might hit up Stacy and be like, hey man, this person has a lot of family that's into like hoodoo, voodoo type stuff, and like, and I might hit him up, like, but that's part of trying to have a network to offer a variety of resources to people, so that way if you can, as an investigator, like if you can't help them out by the time you do everything you can paranormally, because that's my wheelhouse. I can't help them. I'm not a psychiatrist, as earlier was said, but I will help them in my wheelhouse the best I can. And then if I can't by the end of all that, then I'll refer them on to the next stage and say, well, hey, look, we did all this. Let's try this next step now.
Well, Andrea has a very interesting question in chat. And the question is, so how would you help someone you know has an attachment, but they don't believe in the paranormal at all?
Right?
Well,
back then we just put them on a stake and burn them.
Hey.
What? Oh, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, that's a very loaded question, honestly, because you have to look at that ethically. You have to consider free will. You have to consider how attached this attachment is, right? You have to understand their belief systems. You have to, I mean, there's just so many things that go into it. Maybe they did at one point believe in the paranormal, but the attachment has them convinced it doesn't exist now. Or maybe their belief system tells them paranormal can't possibly exist. And they're doing studies that show actual that removing things like, especially in possessions or extreme attachments, can actually damage the person mentally. They're seeing some evidence of this. They're seeing that, especially if you're doing it without their consent, if you're doing it against will, you're going to damage the person. You're going to hurt them. When your intention is to help by trying to remove an attachment, you're trying to help them, but you can actually cause them permanent physical harm by doing that. That's why, free will, going into it, explaining the risks, explaining the process, making sure that they understand. And, maybe they just think they have a bad luck charm, right?
Yeah.
That this is why they're having this attachment issue. I don't know.
Well, there's two things I want to hit real quick. Sean brought up something earlier that Andrea, so, and what you just said, Jen, like, so let's just say you did remove an attachment off somebody that didn't believe in the paranormal. Well, and so if they were really sort, and that would probably mean that they weren't really believing, they weren't really participating in it. But Sean talked about this earlier. When you remove attachments, though, there's a void, right? Well, they have to do work. Sometimes the clients have to do the work to fill the void now. And you have to help people with that sometimes. So if this person didn't believe in paranormal and they whatever, but you just removed and you caused a void in their life, and they're not susceptible to putting in the work, that's where the harm can happen, right? But you also have to ask yourself this, Andrea, is if somebody comes to you and says, hey man, I think I have an attachment, but I don't believe in this paranormal stuff, you got to ask yourself, that's kind of weird, right? Like, it's kind of, why are they coming for help if they don't believe in it?
Yeah.
So that's kind of a flag. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't help them. I'm just saying, like, you just got to really think about if somebody's coming to you. But if they're not coming to you, then yeah, now we're talking about just the free will. And again, we can't help people that, again, we don't want to cause voids in their life.
There's also another thing that mediums talk about a lot, and it goes to the line of ethics. And there is kind of a divide in the medium community, right? There are those that believe that you should not read a person without their consent. They say you can't. Well, you absolutely can. You choose whether you're going to or not, right? And even if they've got protections up, even if they've got blocks, there are ways to get through them. And
About viewing.
There's a list of ways, and it just depends on the situation, what works fastest and best. And people don't often understand that. They're like, oh, well, I've got these protections up. Well, guess what? They crumble. Okay. But where I was going with that was that a lot of mediums believe that you should not ethically read another person without their consent. And as mediums, that's kind of hard sometimes because, you're walking through Walmart and you find out about something. I was walking through a store not too long ago with Josh, and I was like, he doesn't know that he's sick. He doesn't know that in a year he's going to be gone. And Josh was like, well, aren't you going to tell him? And I said, that's not my place. I don't have consent. I don't know him. I don't know, what the situation is. He has not asked for help. He's not interested in help. In fact, I'm pretty sure he was intoxicated when we saw him, which would be the wrong time to approach with something like that. But there's that line of ethics. When do we share the information that we get? When do we keep it to ourselves, right? It's not a matter of can you, it's a matter of should you. And free will gives them the option to choose whether or not they're willing to let you engage. And if you want an honest read on somebody, having their consent is the best way. If you try to read somebody and they're not consenting, you may not always get full accurate information.
And sometimes, Andrea, in situations like that, there's occasionally, and this has worked rarely with me, but it has worked. I've done this. And I can exactly remember one situation for sure where I had a buddy that didn't believe in any kind of paranormal. He had an attachment. I knew it. Everybody that did believe knew it. But he had some issues in his life. And so I actually was able to approach it more of the mental health side of things than paranormal, where I was just kind of like, hey, you got this stuff going on, bro. It was just more of I approach it like a guy to guy kind of talk, like man to man, just kind of BS. And I picked the right opportunity. It was just when we were having some heart to heart discussion stuff. And I'm just like, hey, and I kind of approached it in that sense of maybe you should consider, talking to some therapy or, some therapist or something and stuff. And then he actually ended up going to a psychiatrist. They didn't prescribe medication, but it was able to help him work through some stuff. And I noticed his life better. I'm not saying that necessarily helped with the attachment, but sometimes at least he got a different path that he may have been able to start self-healing and even maybe self-getting rid of the attachment, because unfortunately I didn't end up being around long enough to find out if he ever ditched the attachment, but it's possible he could have self-healed. But I do know that he was on a much better path once he got some psychiatry help. So I know there was one time when I was able to approach it in a different direction, if that helps.
Yeah, I want to jump in on that because that's kind of what we do. We don't, first of all, we don't cast stuff out unless the person knows what's going on. So that's kind of our ethical side of that. But we basically, 9 times out of 10, I don't talk to them about the spirits and stuff first. 9 times out of 10, I'm dealing with everything else that's going on in their life. And sometimes they'll stop and say, well, when are we going to talk about the spirits? And I said, well, we'll get there. But if there's been a situation, especially if there's someone, I want to just give an example of a husband who didn't believe in any of this, and he was sitting in the next room while we talked with me and the wife, and we started dealing with a lot of these issues. And I started talking to him, and he's like, well, he started telling me all this stuff. And we started going down this road, and we developed a relationship. And after about maybe 3 or 4 months, he came to me one day and said, dude, I think I got something going on spiritually. And I was like, yeah, you do. And so sometimes it's helping the person, but sometimes, I'll just be honest, sometimes you just got to say, okay, I can't help you any other way until something breaks loose and you come back to me. And that's the last thing I'll say on that is I usually don't try to burn bridges. I'll usually try to say, hey, if there's anything going on, you contact me day or night. You know,
Yeah.
just let me know. If you need help, let me know. And usually people will call me back and say, hey, there's something going on.
Well, and I want to jump in real quick too as we get ready to wrap things up here in a second. I'm going to give you guys a chance to throw any more comments in here about mental health because it's really important. But another pro tip, guys, attachments can be fixed yourself. You can actually fix your own attachments. It's not like you're getting a spiritual attachment and you're like, oh God, I've got to go get an expert or something. It's not like one of those. You can fix your own attachments. Um, you know, and a lot of it comes down to empowerment. We were talking about this earlier. I think Stacy talked about it. Jen talked about it. Everybody. It's that empowerment. Once you take control and you own yourself, you own the things in your life, and you empower yourself, and you take back. I think that's probably, if I had to guess, that when I was talking about my past friend, when he went to psychiatry and he started to learn how to take control of his situation and so I think he probably defeated his own attachment. He probably got rid of that spirit. Once you have that power, the spirit's like, okay, crap, and it has no more hold. It has no more hold. So that's why I wanted to kind of circle back to that of like what these guys are talking about is like, sometimes just learning about fixing your life, fixing who you are, when you're sitting back going, well, who am I? When you fix who you are, like we talk about with the car analogy, and you fix the motor and the brakes and all that first, and then worry about the outside, fix the inside first, right? Then that tends to help. So anyway, so I just wanted to say that, guys, I'm going to give you guys an opportunity. Anybody want to throw any last minute comments about mental health and paranormal?
Well,
I'll let Stacy go here in a second. I just want to say you got to fight for yourself. Look at yourself, self-reflect, look deeper within inside yourself, and get some friends to help you. Get people to help you. Don't do it alone.
mm, yeah, and
Absolutely.
you do have your own agency. It actually reminds me, there used to be a viral video that was going around YouTube that was hilarious, but it was basically this couple were sitting on the couch and they get really close on the woman's face. She's really pretty and she's sitting there, she's talking. It's like, I've got all this pressure, and I've got it's just this throbbing. I don't know what it is where I just cannot feel comfortable about doing anything. Because and then they zoom out a little bit, and she's got a framing nail in the middle of her forehead, and the boyfriend is like, "Well, if you just if you just pull," she's like, "I just need somebody to listen to me, okay? I need someone to understand what I'm going through, okay?" And he's like, "But if you just stop trying to fix me." And then she goes on, "Well, when I put on my sweaters, they snag, different things like that." You have to actually take agency of what is in your life and actually fix your problem, even if it requires someone to come along and, pull it out of your head.
Yes. And with that being said, guys, have a happy 4th of July. Thank you all for showing up. Thank you to all the regulars that show up and contribute. You guys are amazing. And don't forget about the Discord. I know Smokey Rook is in there. Some of you guys, so remember, if you're not a member, get Discord, get your membership on Discord. Like, it's free, but set up your profile and get on the Paranormal Council server, because you guys could head over there if you want to discuss anything. I'll be monitoring it tonight for a little bit while we're in post show. And so if you guys pop in any of the things, there's even voice chats. You guys want to talk to each other. So you guys in the chat, you guys can pop in. There's a members voice chat. You can pop in there. You can talk to each other and debate things. So you can have your own little members council. Okay. If you want to have it on there. So guys, but remember, share, hit that like button, and we will see you next week. And we have some special shows coming up. I just wanted to throw a mention out there. We got a cryptid show in a few weeks with a special guest. So you're not going to want to miss. So stay tuned. But anyways, guys, we'll see you next week. Bye.
Peace.